Welcome to the Hybrid Hangout, where we answer your questions and share insights on the latest facility management trends. Whether you're in the office, at home, or anywhere in between, thank you for joining us today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. It is the Hybrid Hangout Podcast. I am Jennifer Heath, Director of Product Marketing here at FM Systems.
And I am Brian Haines, the Chief Strategy Officer at FM Systems.
And Brian, we have been doing this podcast now a couple of years, and we've been calling it the Hybrid Hangout, but I think we might have to change the name to be 5 days a week in the office hangout, because that seems to be a very popular trend right now. What do you think about all these announcements and all these mandates? 5 days a week. What do you think?
Yeah, the office mandate hangout. Maybe that's it.
You have to hang out.
It's really picking up momentum, and it's interesting because we see a lot of mandates coming out. A lot of large corporations. AT&T just announced. We know the federal government has gone back, and it's really seems to be picking up speed. What's interesting is you look at our utilization data, which we've shared since 2019 over a specific data set, and we've seen, obviously we saw the pandemic drop off and we saw this really gradual return. We weren't really drilling into anything more than just utilization, how the offices are being utilized. We weren't really breaking it down by, were those people coming back 5 days a week that were in the utilization numbers? Were they coming back 3 days? Were they fully remote? Of course, they wouldn't be showing up in utilization if they were, but it's interesting because when you start breaking it down by days of the week, we still see this bell-shaped curve, right? Where Mondays and Fridays are quite low, and Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. We have to remember that there are a lot of companies and a lot of organizations in the world, and we hear these workplace mandates, and it feels like everybody's going back to the traditional 5-day calendar, but we know that that's not true. I think what's happening is maybe the definition is evolving. So honestly, if you're back 5 days a week and you go back to like maybe a traditional assigned seating, which is kind of like going back to the future, 2019, that doesn't sound like hybrid to me. That sounds different, right? What we found though, is that when looking at the data, and we got access to some third-party data through an analyst that says in 2025, and this is the part that really kind of surprised me, that there will be more people back at the office than hybrid, and that remote workers will drop to less than 10%, which is a significant change. And so, anyway, I find it fascinating. I find a lot of organizations are going back. We're still going to be in this kind of mixed world, but the truth is it does appear to be picking up momentum.
So one of the things that I immediately think about, and maybe this is showing that I'm a little cynical in my old age, but one of the things I immediately think is, why would they do that? Like, why would you demand 5 days a week when we know you can achieve certain levels of productivity from anywhere? So many of us, we're knowledge workers, we're desk workers, everything we need is right here on a laptop and a Wi-Fi connection. So why do we have to force that physical location? And I think the cynical answer would be, well, they're just trying to force people to leave, and then they won't have to pay them a severance, and they're able to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff, whatever they think that is. And I thought about that phrase, and I think it's interesting to think about it in terms of companies telling you what kind of culture they want to have. Right. They want 5 days a week in the office. And a lot of people want 5 days a week in the office. They want that interaction with their coworkers. They're not more productive from home. And I think these organizations are separating the personality types to a certain extent. The people who need that interaction, who thrive in those environments, and people who are more heads down, maybe more introverted, and are going to be higher functioning when they can control their environment a little bit. So I think it's interesting to think about it in terms of kind of separating those personality types. But I also think it's really interesting to think about it in terms of geography. So many years ago, I lived in New York City, and I had a 400 square foot apartment. And I can tell you right now, working from home in a 400 square foot apartment would not be appealing at all. Like now I live in the suburbs in Tennessee and I don't live in 400 square feet. I have a nice big dedicated office with windows and a nice bookcase, and working from home is very attractive because I have the space to do that. So one of the big organizations that has announced is JP Morgan Chase. And they specifically talked about in this article, they are building, so they're requiring 5 days, but they are constructing a new skyscraper in Manhattan, 60 stories, 14,000 employees, and it will have amenities including yoga and cycling rooms, meditation spaces, and a state-of-the-art food hall. If I'm a New Yorker in 400 square feet, you bet I want to go there 5 days a week.
Guess what? I'm going to be, we're involved in that project, and I'm going to be touring it maybe tomorrow. So it's going to be kind of interesting that you just... So that's kind of cool. It's interesting. I love the way you broke it out by personality type. Some people are going to want to go back. Some people are not. And often when I see these, releases, they give the reasons why they think, that they want their employees to come back. And sometimes they cite productivity, which the increased productivity, which has already been sort of discounted in terms of a lot of research saying that, it doesn't increase productivity. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be leaving here shortly and driving to the office in Raleigh for a few meetings, and I'm going to be in my vehicle for an hour and a half. I'll probably try to dial into something, but the truth is, will I be as productive? No way. And the people who are commuting every day, depending on what their commute looks like, even in cities, even if it's a tight geographic area, often will be commuting at least an hour due to traffic and train times and everything else. And you aren't productive. You're losing a couple of hours a day. So there's other reasons. And those other reasons are, I do like being around people. When we do get together for meetings and things, and we have summits and we have planning meetings, and we get together, I think there is a really rapid exchange of ideas that happens that's really difficult when you're sitting alone in your office. An idea pops in your head. You don't just go looking through the Teams list to see who's green so you can find someone to talk to. Those kinds of interactions do happen when you're together. And I think that is interesting. Some of these press releases say that the CEOs believe that water cooler conversations are really important to ideation and culture. And, I'm not going to discount the value of those things, but you can, my personal opinion is you can create an environment where, you can come together for meaningful events and meaningful things and important times and have dedicated in-office times that don't require a strict 5-day a week, schedule. There's going to be interesting fallout. A lot of people aren't going to do it, and it's going to be really interesting to see if these organizations will give greater leadway to their greater talent. Within all organizations, there's sort of your top performers, and there's people who aren't the top performers, and it's going to be interesting to see. Are they going to say, all right, if you're rated 5-star, you don't have to come Mondays and Fridays. Who knows, right? It's very interesting. Also, I will betcha some of it has to do with generations, like who's in charge and their approach to things and what they're used to and what they'd like, maybe greater control and getting people back. We'll see, but it's I read between the lines. One of the CEOs said, listen, we know that there's not enough seats for all of our people. Find a place to sit.
Yeah.
That's going to be an awesome experience, right? Well, I'm going to sit in the cafeteria today and a hallway tomorrow. These strategies are not being well thought out, I don't think. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think 2025 is an absolute pivotal year.
Absolutely. I think so too. We're far enough away now from the experience of the pandemic, kind of adjusting to a different normal. And it's like we're like you said, we're going back to the future. We're going back to this place where we're reconsidering again what it is the office needs to be. And something else that's interesting to me when I think about the different organizations that are announcing, particularly JP Morgan Chase and other financial organizations, I think Goldman Sachs made a similar announcement. Financial services in particular seems to really be driving these mandates. And in a way, it does make sense. They do tend to be in large cities where you're going to want to have that office space amenity. But it's also the nature of that business to do business in person, right? You're constantly meeting people and introducing people and having these different conversations. In different industries, though, I think it's going to be harder to make it stick. In technology, our industry is a really good example. So our company is made up of series of acquisitions, right? There's been companies and offices and people picked up along the way over the last 10 to 15 years. We've been a distributed mobile workforce for 15 years now. We've been doing this a really long time. And I think the nature of our business, it is important for us to have those meaningful events, to have, conversations, but a lot of us do heads down work. We have to be able to sit down. Developers, QA, they are not talking at the water cooler, they are heads down doing what they do, crunching numbers. Accounting, I think, is probably similar. A lot of that work, to your point about productivity, there's no benefit to being in the office for a lot of those roles and a lot of the different organizations out there.
Yeah, and there's variables, and you kind of touched upon one of the financial services. I was talking to someone recently, and they said some of the financial services, at least a certain part of their population, there's compliance issues. Like they have to be there, right? There's like rules and things that say you have to be in person for specific activities. It's really tough to get, it's really tough to get a physical exam in healthcare. You're not there's a lot of e-doctor stuff and things like that, but the e-doctor is not going, touch your elbow. Did that hurt when you touched your elbow? No, they would prefer that you be in there. I think, in a lot of instances, the dynamic around things like classrooms for students is really different when they're in the room versus everybody,
Definitely
dialing into a meeting. You don't know if people are paying attention. It's obvious when you're in the same room, if someone's not paying attention, it's really easy to pick up on that cue, right? So there's a lot of dynamics here that are really interesting. And I guess my big question, Jen, when they go back, are they expecting it to be kind of like what it was in the past? Because I don't think people want that in a lot of ways. Maybe some people do, and I will guarantee you they've been people who maybe spent their entire career in that world. But the truth is, I think for the most part, this whole idea around a better workplace experience has taken flight, right?
Definitely. We're not going back to cube farms, and
nobody wants a 6-foot high cubicle wall with books piled, a mile high, and you're hiding in there. It just doesn't feel like our current world. It feels much different than that. So, some people may be pining for like the office of the past, but the truth is the number of people, the different generations, and we've talked about this in previous webcasts, all the different generations that are going back in are going to expect, I think, a superior or at least better workplace experience that's going to really be broken down into a lot of things, including, accessibility of space and assets and team members, and knowing where those things are, knowing how to find things in the office, especially if you're in an environment where you could be potentially sitting in different places, often depending on teams coming together or breaking up, or, some people are hybrid, some people aren't, hoteling, all those things, right? Like having access to information, plus, phone as a badge is becoming a really big thing, being able to badge into things, get through doors, get into the parking deck. All of those capabilities, as well as our ability to be able to measure the performance of the workplace from a number of different areas, the way that their assets are performing, the way that our space is performing, the way that indoor air quality is maybe affecting health. All of those things are becoming really, really super important, which means the return office experience to me needs to be better to really keep people happy.
Definitely. You have to offset the kind of negative connotation of the mandate. Like, you have to do this, but we're going to make it a great experience for you. We're going to make it seamless and easy and accessible. The other side of that, talking about, thinking about how our space is performing, to me, one of the big downsides of these mandates is if you're in the office 5 days a week, then you are powering all that real estate 5 days a week. That was always one of the real benefits of hybrid work, is that you do have that bell curve. You have opportunities to be more strategic in how you're delivering energy. You have opportunities to reduce your consumption, reduce your overall emissions. Of course, there's cost savings that goes along with all of that. I think organizations are kind of leaving a lot on the table in these 5-day mandates in terms of better managing their energy. And I wonder if they're taking that into account. Like, are they also looking at how do we make our operations more efficient? Are we just sending our emissions through the roof with these mandates, or are we doing something to counterbalance that?
Yeah, it's interesting because you brought up something that I've been thinking about recently. Are these organizations who are mandating prepared for the costs associated with everyone being back?
Yes.
So buildings are going to be getting used in really hard, intense ways. Equipment's going to be on a lot more. Things are going to break down. It's interesting. I was thinking about ourselves in our Raleigh office because I had to put in some service tickets last week because it was like 59 degrees in this office, and it's a new office. It's 8 months old. That there's something wrong with the HVAC system. Well, the developer and property owner of that very cool facility that we're in, they weren't paying. We had that space, but we weren't in it very much. There's the pandemic where everyone went home, and then we were building a new office, so we weren't in there until it was completed. Now we're in there, and my goodness, we're putting in service tickets. We're requesting things get fixed. We had a broken door. We've had all sorts of things that are costing money. You know why? Because we're using it. So there's a real, we are getting a lot of interest from the market in things like extending the life of assets and looking at what we can do to better help our buildings perform. But the truth is, there is going to be a cost impact to these mandates. And I'm wondering if they have done that. Not only cost impact, but also personnel impact. If people are there and there are more problems, you're probably going to need more people to solve it, right? Or more technology solutions. Something is going to be involved with helping these buildings operate more effectively. It's like a vehicle. If you've got a car in your driveway and you're only putting a few thousand miles a year on it, which who does that? That car is probably going to last forever. But if you're commuting every single day and you're putting it through its paces and maintenance costs, it all goes up. And it's the same for buildings, right? The more you use it, the more it costs.
Right.
So that's going to be an interesting metric to see if that's being taken into account with all these mandates. Are they prepared for cost?
Yeah. And does it counterbalance the perceived increase in productivity? Do they feel that they are gaining so much from a business advancement standpoint that it offsets all this additional cost? I don't know. I don't know that you do. So
yeah, it's interesting because we can measure it, right? I mean, it's simple. We've got an analytics platform. We put utilization data into that based upon a lot of different inputs, sensors, Wi-Fi, badge, you name it. We can measure utilization really, really well, but we can also track things like maintenance costs, project costs, lease costs, all of those things. We can see it. And I'm going to be, as a matter of fact, I'm going to do this now as a project. I'm going to look into this because we should be able to see a correlation between increased utilization and increased operating costs. We should be able to easily see that.
Yeah. Just the service order tickets. I mean, it should just be right alongside. Yeah.
Yeah.
All these lines are going up.
Yeah. I'm gonna write the flip side of the 5-day mandate and talk about
how much it costs.
How much it's
costing.
Nobody's mentioning that, are they?
And I will say the other thing that I don't think anybody mentions, and we've alluded to it a couple of times, this is like the dark underbelly of the return to office mandate, is the commute.
Oh,
The commute. I mean, anyone who has ever had a hard commute, like just the thought of it kind of chills you a little. Like if you've ever sat for an hour and a half to go 3 miles, just staring at the same license plate the whole time, it is stressful. And I remember the first time I ever drove in LA that I anticipated that it was bumper to bumper, crawling along. It is bumper to bumper, but you're going 80 miles an hour. It is much more stressful than going 40 miles an hour.
yeah. Yeah, and there's the impact to well, there's stress, right? There's stress that we bring to work and then stress that we bring home. There's impact on families. There's a lot of things that we're not really talking about, the commute, but also, hey, when I'm home, I can walk my dog or take care of the kids or, whatever that is. But if I'm not there, somebody else got to do it. Somebody's that's got to get put somewhere else. Increasing stress, really affecting work-life balance. Don't hear a lot of talk about that as well. A lot of people have really fallen in love with the workplace, with the work-life balance that hybrid has provided.
Absolutely. And parents, I think, probably more than anyone else, like having that flexibility to get your kid on the school bus and still make your first meeting without feeling like a crazy person in between the two activities is a gift. I mean, that's a wonderful thing to enable parents to have that additional time with their kids. It's a gift to those kids.
Right.
A big sacrifice, I think, for folks to do that. And I will say, I read somewhere that there is some expectation that the workday will be shortened as a part of these 5-day-a-week office mandates. It's not necessarily going to be an 8-hour day, which that creates a little bit of that work-life balance. So I'll be interested to see.
I'll be really surprised if that happens. The other one that's floating around a lot is a reduction to 4-day work week. And is it really a 4-day work week, or is it we're going to be in the office 4 days a week and we're going to work from home on the 5th day? That's probably
More likely.
more like it than, organizations just going, you know what, we're gonna pay you the same for less. Skeptical. We'll see. I've been proven wrong a lot of times, but on this one, I think I'm probably pretty close. So,
Well, we will keep talking about it. We'll keep reading these headlines and bringing it all together. And it's going to be really interesting to see how the next year unfolds. I agree. It's going to be a really pivotal time that kind of dictates where we're going to go the next 5 years.
yeah, we'll call it the mandated hybrid hangout or something like that. I'm not sure, but it will be. It will be fascinating. This one's interesting. I've got a real close eye on it in 25, so it's gonna be fun.
All right, Brian. Always good to catch up. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, Jen. Thanks, everybody.